What is up, my kings and queens and all in between? Welcome back, my beautiful crowned community. Thank you so much for being here. It is Andrew Velasquez with another episode of Mindful Artist Podcast. And if you're watching, you already see my beautiful guest right now. Can't wait to introduce you to her or introduce her to you, is what I meant. That's how excited I am. Before we do that, though, that song you just heard is called Mi Corazón. You can download wherever you stream your favorite music. It is written by myself, produced by Aaron McLendon. You can also help us out. Share this episode with somebody that you love. This is a very special, special episode because I have a very special, special guest with a lot of gifts and talent for you guys to just, take advantage of. Give us those thumbs up, reviews. The more you do that, the more likely will come out in other people's algorithms. So here we are, your one-stop shop place for mindfulness, creativity, while balancing entrepreneurship and being spiritual. And today I have the gorgeous, beautiful, talented Linda Spellman, everybody. Welcome, welcome, Linda. How
Hello,
are
hello.
you?
I'm great. How are you?
You look so good. I'm
Oh,
so
thank
excited
you.
to talk to you. This is going to be such a fun conversation. Is it okay if I give you a little bit of a bio?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Welcome, Linda Spellman. Linda Spellman grew up in the north suburbs of Chicago. She earned her MBA and spent years as a successful marketing executive for high-profile national retailers, Southern California to Atlanta. She was enjoying a thriving career when a sexual assault changed everything. A silent survivor of sexual abuse since childhood, Linda's life began to take a series of unexpected, sometimes devastating, other times remarkable turns, not the least of which was the unexpected appearance of spiritual gifts, including an ability to communicate with those who have passed. Her curiosity about this development led her to seek out other trauma survivors and learn about their experiences, paths to healing, and spiritual gifts they developed after trauma. Linda is now an author, speaker, and burgeoning subject matter expert on trauma from survivors' perspective. She is also a gifted psychic medium with clients around the world, including a growing roster of celebrity clients. Her self-described purpose in life is to give people hope. And she's also my spiritual mentor. So welcome, welcome, Linda Spellman. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm lucky enough to be a spiritual mentor for you. You are a spiritual mentor for so many, including me, just
Oh,
because you have such a lovely spirit.
thank you. Yeah, it's very special to have you here. I see the art in your talents and your gift, and there is an art to spirituality, and there is an art to, communication and being in this connection with the deceased past and have a message for loved ones. And I mean, you've done so many really great things for myself and my family and friends. And so I'm very grateful to have you here and others to learn about your gifts. So how did it feel to hear your bio and some of your accomplishments?
It was really interesting because it really feels almost like two different lifetimes
Yeah.
because the corporate me feels so distant now from the spiritual me.
Hmm.
Uh, that was an important part of my life, but it's
Sure.
so different from how I live my life today in almost every single way.
Hmm.
It it was, when I say it was unexpected, it was truly unexpected. I was the VP of marketing. I built databases. I was like math girl. I was not woo
Yeah.
woo girl. So for
Yeah.
me to have taken this turn was um, not what I had in my 5 year plan. But
Yeah. Right.
when God and the universe tells you you should be going this way, you kind of go that way.
Period. Yeah, you got to follow those little inner voices, that um intuition, and I mean really your your talent, your magic, your what you're able to communicate and how you're able to be a medium of that is, I think, is a great art form. So can we go back in time and talk a little bit about when that happened? And for those that maybe are not aware of what a psychic medium is,
Sure,
maybe you can
sure.
tell us a little bit about that too. Is that okay?
Absolutely. So I was always a little psychic as a kid, but people don't really talk about that. So it's like, okay, that's nice. Move along with your life. So that's what I did. But really, gosh, I guess it was like 8 years ago now.
Okay.
I went out after work and I was assaulted,
I'm sorry that
and
happened.
I went to work the next day. because that's what I did. You know, it was like,
Hmm.
okay, I don't have time for that. And I pretended like it didn't happen. I tried to pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I wasn't very successful at it. I tried for months and months and months, and I finally realized that I needed to get some healing. And so I decided to go into treatment for PTSD. And when I went into treatment, I'd been there for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks. When I was sitting in the sun, it was in Arizona, and I was
Yeah.
sitting in the sun, and I looked next to me and I saw a spirit.
Yeah.
And I, of course, did a double take because I was like, okay, what's going on? And clear as day, I could see the spirit. And then he went away. So thankfully, there was somebody that worked there that was pretty spiritually aware. So I explained what had happened. And he also knew me well enough to know that I wasn't going crazy, although I questioned it myself at that point. And I had asked him if anybody had ever died on the property. And he looked to be in his teens, and it was an adult facility. And he said, yes, there was somebody who had passed away on the property who was, I think it was early 20s, late teens. And that's kind of where it started. And then after I ended up leaving that facility, there are no such thing as coincidences. That's one thing I'm absolutely certain of right now in my life. So I ended up moving to LA, and there were a lot of meetups. And I
Sorry, I
got
had to
an
turn the fan off.
that's okay. I got an introduction to a meetup that was somebody that was giving free psychic medium readings. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll sign up for this. And I had just finished doing Reiki training, Reiki, which is like an energy healing, and you kind of heal with your hands. And in the reading, her students were okay, but then she gives a reading at the last half of it. And she said, you think you're going to heal with your hands, but you're actually an extremely talented psychic medium. And I was like, huh, because I literally had just finished Reiki training. So I ended up training with her. The interesting question that you asked is, what is a psychic medium? Because a lot of people kind of interchange those
Yeah.
terms.
Hmm.
Psychic is having the ability to know things, to sense things that you would otherwise have no way of knowing. A medium is somebody who communicates with people on the other side, people who have crossed over. So some psychics are medium, not all psychics are mediums, but I think all mediums are psychic.
Got it. Okay.
If I didn't just completely confuse things.
No, I understand it. Yeah, you're almost the medium part is a little bit of a vessel to translate communication and messages from another, realm that
Mhm.
doesn't exist here with what we can see physically, us. And then the psychic part is maybe just a more powerful intuition, gut feeling of, you know, good, bad, or whatever the message or energetically, it's essentially what it is. And you have both. And you do not realize this until later, maybe when you have, I don't know, you because you're an author and you've researched and you've been able to sit down with a lot of survivors that have discovered powers that they had. And
Mhm.
I will go, we're going to dive deep into that as well. But I think it's just you possibly always had it, but you needed to be broken down to like discover it, right?
Yes, I feel like everybody has a certain amount of psychic ability. Um, but in my book, Trauma Inspired, when I interviewed, because I was really curious. Yes, there it is, Trauma Inspired. I really was curious to see if other people, if this has happened to other people after some sort of traumatic experience, if they had developed gifts. So I interviewed 50 other trauma survivors who had developed gifts after experiencing trauma. And throughout the book, a lot of the book ended up being about surviving trauma. Because one of the things I realized as I was interviewing all of these people is that we ended up following a very similar path to healing. So I actually kind of reorganized the book to be about, here's step by step how you can heal from all different kinds of trauma, because that was the other thing, is all of these people went through different types of trauma. There was a lot of childhood abuse, there was domestic abuse, there was adult assault, there were 4 people who actually died and were brought back to life, there was children going through trauma, which affects the adults. There was loss of loved one. So there were all of these different types of trauma, and somehow we had all followed a very similar path. And that's what I was looking for when I was trying to heal. I'm like, can somebody just tell me how to heal? I would see these inspirational stories of people, but I couldn't apply that to my life. And so that's one of the things I was hoping to accomplish with this book. But it also gives tips for people who have loved ones who are surviving trauma, and how you can understand them better, but also like what to do and what not to do. When you think you're helping, sometimes you're really not. So it was a guide for that too. But my theory that developed after talking to all of these people is when you're going through significant trauma, you get to a point where you can't find the help that you need here. And you are basically crying out for help to whoever in the universe will listen, whatever your personal belief system is. I'm a Christian. That's God for me. I don't judge anybody else's personal belief system. So whether that's the universe, whether it's Buddha, whoever, you're crying out for help. You're reaching your hand out to the other side. They answer. Now, there are a couple of things that happen when you're recovering from trauma that make the listening to that answer a little easier. One is sometimes in order to just put one foot in front of the other and get through life, you're almost numbing your other senses because otherwise it's too overwhelming. Now, have you ever driven down the road and you're looking for an address and you turn down the radio?
Okay. Yeah,
Because you feel
actually,
like, right?
yeah,
You're not listening for the address, but instinctively you know that the more that you take away the other senses distractions,
yeah.
you're going to focus in on the sense
Interesting.
that you're paying attention to.
Yeah, yeah, that
Everybody
makes
does it. It
sense.
makes absolutely no sense when you think about it,
No, logically, no.
but there have been studies done, for instance, in the blind, that they have better hearing abilities. Your brain actually remaps itself to be able to focus on the senses that you do have. So my theory is that some of the numbness that you experience after trauma in your five senses can open up that sixth sense and make it stronger. Also, some of the isolation after trauma, a lot of people isolate after trauma, and that quietness, that being alone, also eliminates some of the noise that gets in the way of hearing messages. And then the third thing is when you heal, that often requires stopping. For me, I literally had to stop and leave my job and go into treatment, which is something I never would have done before. Stopping my job was something that would never have crossed my mind. I mean, I went to work the day after I was assaulted. So, I mean, that's the way I was. But in stopping and in listening and in just being, all of that noise and distraction that's in the way all of a sudden becomes quieter. And so you can hear the messages, feel the messages. There's four clairsentients that make up psychic
Yes.
abilities, whatever you
Yeah,
want to
tell
call,
us
right?
about that, please.
So there's clairsentience, which is that feeling. It's that gut feeling when you walk into a room and you're like, okay, there's tension in here, or this place is haunted. There's clairvoyance, where you can see things, where things just visions come to you. A lot of times people who are precognitive and dream things that then happen, they're clairvoyant. They actually see what they're
I
dreaming.
relate to that one.
Clairaudience, where you hear it,
I also relate to that one.
right? And then there's claircognizance, where you just know it. You typically will be stronger in one of those areas. It doesn't mean you can't do the others. It's just like everything else, right? Some people will be stronger at math than at English. It's just like anything else, right? You call it intuition, and the head of Virgin Airlines calls it intuition. You call it psychic abilities, and you're nuts, but it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
all of those senses start to open up, the clairsentience, the clairaudience, the clairvoyance, depending on what your specific talent is. And you start getting these gut feelings more often and stronger. You start seeing synchronicities, the repeating numbers. Some people see repeating ones. Some people will see just the same things over and over again. You see a purple VW bug, I'm just making this up, and then all of a sudden you see one everywhere.
Yeah.
It's those kind of signs and synchronicities that let you know, one, that you're on the right path, but also that you're starting to pay attention to those signs more, that they're there for you more. Now, these things are so helpful in life, not, you don't necessarily have to want to become somebody who does what I do, but it helps you in, do you swipe right or do you swipe left when you're on a dating app? Is this the place you want to live when you're looking at apartments or homes? Is this the right job for you? When you learn, I teach workshops about getting in touch with their own spiritual gifts. The reason I teach this is because when you learn how to listen to what you're already getting, that provides your own guidance, and your guidance, not just from your own intuition, but from your loved ones, your angels, your guides on the other side.
Yeah.
And it
Hmm.
just helps you in every area of life.
Yeah. This is why I wanted you here. I want to give the audience a little and the viewers a little bit of context too. If that's okay, I thank you for sharing all of that too, by the way. Um, so I was raised Catholic, and that was the spirituality that I was inherited through my surroundings, and obviously learning that I was sinning and being, part of the LGBT community, and not knowing that, I decided to be open-minded to other religions, and I was, and I studied other forms of religion for a long time, Kabbalah, Muslim, Hinduism, and it all kind of kept going back to meditation. And my point in bringing that up is that I was told that anything outside of that, bubble, spiritual wise, was wrong or sinning, and so even though Sister Mary's intentions were to help teach me about life and the ways of God and, Jesus and all the things, I was scared of psychic mediums for a long
Mhm.
time. And I remember being really young and fresh out of, fashion school and cosmetology school. And oftentimes they would approach me at work, and I'm not, knowing anything about them. And they would want to read my palms or read my tarot cards, and I would always decline because it was something that it was foreign to me. And again, because of my surroundings and how I was raised spiritually. So it wasn't until Linda, really, which was just like a crazy coincidence on how we met. Is it okay if I share that
Yeah,
brief story?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, I just feel like it will help people understand like why you're so special to me, and why um you've just been such an impact in my life. So I was working with a client who had contacted me to rebrand and be her creative director with my team. So we were able to like make her over, have hair, makeup, wardrobe, photography, videography, and it happened to be across where my salon was in Glendale, California, by the Americana, which is where Linda happened to live. And so we were using the area with the pool and the gym and the beautiful background on the rooftop of the Americana as a lovely background. And the final shot was my client pretty much submerging in the pool in this beautiful gown and just kind of posing and doing her thing because she was releasing a new album. Well, Linda saw us, and I remember you approached us, and you were very polite and apologized for interrupting, and said that you felt something and you had a message for somebody that was there, but you were unsure who exactly, and wanted to give the message if we were interested. And so we were like, okay, cool, yeah, sure. And my buddy Greg, who was the videographer at the time and the photographer, Greg,
Mhm.
he was like, what did she mean I'm a size medium? I'm like, no, bro, she's a psychic medium. He didn't connect the two. And then after, we were both like, yeah, sure, I'm curious now. Like, I want to know. And so we wrapped up the shoot, and we approached Linda, and it was me and Greg, and she was communicating and describing the person, but neither of us really connected with the description or the message. And then my client, Natasha May, overheard and said, wait, you're talking about my grandma, and then walked up. And so the message was for her this entire time, to follow her passions and her dreams, and that this was the rebirth of her new rebranding. And it was. And after that, her record just was very successful. And that was it. So you felt really bad. You gave us your card and said, I feel bad that the message was not for you, but come back and see me. And Greg went with his girlfriend. I had forgotten about it. I'm at my desk, with my laptop, and then I open, and the card just pops onto my desk. And there it is, Linda Spellman, psychic medium. Like, oh, I remember this. Yeah. long story short, I contacted her and had to reschedule for a couple reasons. I think our availability. And it was during a huge traumatic time of my life. My parents had just announced they were getting a divorce. My dad was selling the house. My mom went into severe chronic depression that took over my life. And I did not know, and Linda did not know any of this. And I did not know the messages that I needed to hear from Linda were so valid and necessary. And I've changed so much since then. And I've been able to trust my intuition much more. And if I had not met you and had that experience, that beautiful experience that I needed to hear from my grandmas and my uncles and deceased past family members, I don't think I would be able to. I wouldn't be here. Like I would not have been as open-minded. I would not have been the caretaker that I needed to be for my mom. So I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Like you that just and sorry I went on such a tangent and this
No,
I knew that
no.
this was going to be a special session. So yeah, I'm so
There's a
grateful for
reason we
that.
met.
I
And
absolutely. That think that's the biggest message.
you are such a
Period.
light in my life and for everyone who meets you. I mean, you have this incredible energy and this ability to just make people feel better and make the room feel lighter. It's just it's a gift that you have that you still don't give yourself credit for, but I'm going to keep working on that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I give all the credit to my mom. She raised me to be the man that I am. So yes,
But it's
sorry
not
for
unusual that the religion gets in the way. Because it's just like anything else, right? Any religion, you can have a sect, a small group that bastardizes it for evil.
Mhm.
And there are some psychic mediums that give all other psychic mediums a bad name. It's You have to look at each individual, and a lot of people feel better when they find out I'm a Christian. Some people, they tell me I can't be a Christian, and they attack and they're ugly and
Mhm.
name calling. People fear what they don't understand. So
Mhm.
understanding that that's where they're coming from is a fear. I just pray for them and then I block them. Um,
Mhm.
but
Love that
it really
feature.
is, yeah, it's really one of those things that it's so ingrained. As
Yeah.
I said, when you call it intuition, everybody's very accepting. If you call it psychic abilities, nope, that's too
Good
much. They can't
point.
handle it. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Mhm.
So it really is a matter of what is accepted and what isn't accepted. And I knew when I started doing this work, I knew the moment I changed my LinkedIn that I would never have a job in the corporate world again.
Well, that's not your place anymore. That was a part,
And
that was a
it's
different
not.
chapter. Yeah. That
But
was
people are so regimented in their beliefs. And honestly, one of the things I actually write about in my book is I feel like the world would be such a better place if we were more interested in hearing another person's point of view than in being right. And I
mm,
feel like society has taught us that. I don't think like we grew up with that need to be right. I
right.
feel like society has driven in us that you must be right. Just
Good
like you
point.
must be a boss, you must work, a gazillion hours a week, you must be successful. And then they keep changing the bar on what successful is so people never feel like they're enough.
Yeah.
And so I really blame society on that. I don't blame individual people
Hmm.
because I've been there. I
Yeah.
was a victim of that mindset for a long, long time. So I don't judge it, and I completely understand it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's one of those things that the more people I talk to, and I've talked to cynics, people who their friend buys them a reading or their friend just kept poking at them until they got a reading, and they'll come on and say, I
Yeah.
don't believe. And I say, that's fine. You don't have to
Right.
believe. It's not my
Johnny
job
was a
to
skeptic.
convince you. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And he's a believer too now.
Yeah.
He's
And it's one of
experienced it.
those things that if your intention is to change people's belief systems, then you're constantly going to be running into a wall. If your
Mhm.
intention is to try to help people, then you can help people. And it may take them a day to figure out how much they've been helped. It may take them months. but
Hmm.
that doesn't matter. As long as
Yeah.
you've planted the seeds and been of some assistance, I can sleep at night.
Yeah. My biggest takeaways from our experiences have been that, yeah, we all have these gifts, we all have these magic ways of manifesting, and we have the capabilities of making our dreams come true. And by ignoring those noises, and this is why I decided to, I had no choice but to create Mindful Artist Podcast because it was coming to me in threes, and it was messages and it was words, and it was like I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I'm so proud. It's been such a fun, beautiful experience to sit down with so many beautiful lights and different forms of artists that share their journey that I know it's going to touch someone else's lives. And that's my job now.
It
You know what I mean?
does.
That's where I feel that's my biggest takeaway. So thank you for allowing me to believe and see in myself and know that I'm capable of hosting this fun project. But
Well, it's really interesting for me. I was thinking about it this morning is, I really went like when I wrote this book, right? It was to help people who have suffered from trauma, or help people who love someone who's suffering from trauma. What I didn't realize when I started doing this work is that's what this work is all about. Because people who have lost someone they love, that's a very traumatic experience. But I also get messages from people who abuse their children and they're finally saying, I'm sorry. People who never said, I'm proud of you to their children. And now their children are my clients and they're hearing for the first time, I'm proud of you. I should have been more encouraging. And they know that it's from them because I have no way of knowing that they had a difficult relationship with their father and their father just comes through and starts saying these things. So it's very healing from multiple perspectives. People who took their own life, who, explain, who take the blame off of people who are trying to blame themselves when they're really truly
mhm,
blameless.
yeah.
It really is about giving people hope. And that really is why my purpose is to give people hope.
Yeah, I've always considered you part of my therapy and my healing process. 100%. It's yeah, it's always a beautiful experience. So if anybody ever is curious or interested, or if you're a skeptic, this is your time. This is your time to experience it, and maybe start with the book Trauma Inspired. 50 Survivors, One Shared Path Through Trauma, Transformations and Triumph with a Twist, written by Linda Spellman. You can get that wherever you purchase books. I have it. It's beautiful. The cover's right here. And yeah, it's a great read. I feel you will have a lot to take away from it. And it's one of those books that you can start reading and you'll end up in another part and you can go back. So it's kind of like my ongoing, like I just need a little bit of therapy, little Linda Spellman right now, and it helps. So I thank you for that too. So I call this section the Love is Art, Art is Love section. And I wanted to ask Linda, what practices or routines do you have in place to nurture your creativity, spirituality while running your business?
A lot of it kind of goes back to one of the things I found out in my book is be still and be quiet enough that you can hear. Like you said, you were directed to do a podcast. I was directed to start my workshops years ago. I was directed to start spiritual energy cleansing of people and of homes years ago. And, the last two I've done one was in LA because I do it remotely. One was in Australia. She found me and I cleansed her home in Australia and boom, it sold. Because I do this a lot for people who are trying to sell their homes and it's not moving for whatever reason. A lot of that is just old pent up energy. But when you're quiet, you can be led to what that next step is. And so that's a lot of it is really just allowing that space. And again, it goes against the no, you must be posting, you must be videoing, you must be tweeting, you must be doing something. One of the most important things you can do is nothing, because that's when you can ruminate. That's when you can create. That's also when you can get help creating
Yeah.
and guidance. One of the things that I've been most recently guided to is doing past life regression. So I'm training now to be able to do past life regression,
Wow.
which you would know about because we have talked a little bit,
We have.
a couple of days.
You just
But
keep adding to that service menu.
well, exactly, but it all has to kind of fall under that umbrella of,
Mm-hmm.
again, trauma healing, because past life trauma affects this life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but really, it's that being still. It's also making sure that I'm defining success my way and not based on what society is telling me, what the world is telling me. I did that for years in my corporate world. And I was very successful, financially speaking, but I couldn't enjoy it because I was so busy all the time and I was under so much stress. And I'm a person who takes everything very seriously. So I put so much pressure on myself that it was, I remember I took 2 week vacation every year. And I remember thinking, I work all year for this 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I would much rather enjoy all year,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't in my mindset. That wasn't in my perspective. So making sure that I'm kind of constantly, okay, here's work, but am I happy?
Right.
Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Have I strayed too far from where I need to be?
Right.
So really, that's probably the biggest thing I do.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, and now what you do is what brings you that joy and that light, and it's a reflection of your, you know, your talent, but it's also mirroring what the individual is experiencing with you. And it's like these tiny little lights that just keep spreading
Oh,
and growing wherever you go.
I
So,
love that visual.
yeah. Can you share any tips or advice for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to incorporate more creativity, spirituality into their work?
Yep, I would say do the same thing. Be still, be quiet, and ask for help. So part of what people don't realize is that you do have loved ones around you, do have angels and guides around you. You can ask for their help, but then you have to be still and quiet enough to listen to it. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten from a reading, because I learn a lot from these readings from my clients. I'm like, oh, I'm going to remember that. That's really good advice. Is if you don't know what to do, don't do anything. That means it's not time yet. It
Mm,
means that whichever path that you're meant to go down isn't quite ready for you yet. But
yeah.
often we feel so pushed. No, I have to decide right now. You really don't in most cases.
Yeah.
So be still. The other thing is allow yourself to step back and say, okay, again, am I happy? Is this what I want to do? The more you get away from who you're meant to be, who you were born to be,
Mm,
the more stress you're going to have, the more exhausted you're going to have, the more draining your day is going to become, even
hmm.
if it doesn't take any more activity, because you're constantly kind of forcing yourself off of who you are to be who that person needs to be.
Valid.
And
Yeah.
that's a path to exhaustion and honestly to unhappiness.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you're checking in with yourself and also determining what is enough,
Hmm.
because there's what you want and what you need, and what you want is endless.
Yeah.
If you're constantly saying, I'm going to keep going until I don't want anymore, you're never going to stop.
You're never going to be happy.
Figure out what you really need and where is your stopping point? Where is your slow down point? So make sure you can enjoy what you've already created and not just
Yeah.
keep killing yourself to get to some ambiguous bar that
Yeah.
somebody has set for you.
Love that. Yeah. You've also really instilled in me that I've always had my breath too, that I can always just breathe and calm myself. And that's helped me
Mm-hmm.
so many times when I thought I was going to have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, because I have always had my breath and I can control it. And it can be still. So thank you for sharing that. I love that. You kind of answered this a little bit already about how you measure success in both your entrepreneurial pursuits and spirituality, and do they ever overlap?
And I would say they do, because for me, my spirituality is my entrepreneurship. Um, so for me, it really is almost one and the same. But I really, there's a couple things I watch out for. I've always said that if I stop being surprised by the things that come up in readings, how accurate it is, and because it is surprising for me, it's like, how did I know that? When I stop that reaction, I need to step back, because that means I'm no longer appreciating it the way I need to.
Mm,
There's a
hmm.
certain humility, because I don't think for a second I'm doing this by myself. I
Right.
know that God and his angels are helping me to help somebody. I actually pray before every single reading that the reading is a blessing for my client, that the words that I hear and the messages that I'm able to communicate are a blessing for them, and that they come from light and love. So the surprise comes when it comes from the humility, right? So if I ever stop being surprised that, I say things that nobody could expect me to say, like, oh, I'm seeing Africa. Oh, my dad's buried there. When I'm talking to my client's dad, this happened a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, when I stop being surprised by that, again, that's going to be my sign that I need to take a step back. I need to clear my schedule for a couple of weeks and just remember how appreciative I am and how grateful I am and how much I'm not doing it. So that's kind of a weird way to answer your question, but that's something I constantly watch out for.
Yeah.
And it really is the reaction of my clients.
Yeah.
I tell people I make people cry for a living, but it's crying out of release. It's crying out of
it's literally a purge.
gratitude. Yes, it's a purge.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever stop seeing that kind of reaction of, I mean, I can feel how much lighter clients feel at the end of a reading than the beginning. If I stop seeing that, I need to back up and just do some more praying and some more meditating and redirect. So that, I think, is how I would answer your question.
Yeah, I love that. Johnny also expresses his gratitude for making me more sensitive and okay with crying, because I don't know, it was just something that I didn't really do. I'd never really released and cried, and that's not healthy. You can't be you holding that in, storing all that energy, and it's gonna purge and come out in a way or another. It's gonna have to come out. And when it finally does, I was like, oh, so this is what crying and emotional is supposed to be about. And having vulnerability is actually a beautiful thing. I'm so grateful for that
it's
too.
Necessary. One of the quotes I have in my book is that tears are a shower for your soul. And it really is that freshness. But a lot of people who don't like to cry, it's because they feel a subconscious need to always be the strong one, to always be the perky, happy one, to always be the one who's looking on the bright side.
That's it. You hit it.
But that's a lot of responsibility to take on, and nobody can be that person all the time, and you shouldn't have to be. That's a recipe for building up a lot of unequal relationships, where people can dump on you all the time, but you never get to ask for their help. You never get to express when you're not feeling happy. And so it really is a healthy thing to do, but it also allows you to see relationships that are very one-sided and start shifting them the other way.
Yeah, I love that. All right, you guys. So this is called the How You Gonna Love Somebody Else If You Can't Love Yourself First segment. So because I'm the beauty guy, that's my thing. Linda, what's your self-care beauty regimen? Do you take time for yourself selfishly before you are of service to others? And do you have any beauty skin tips that you want to share?
So I have to say I'm kind of a minimalist as far as this goes.
Yeah. I'm your therapist for that sometimes.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I have to say that I never used to do anything. My mother had wonderful skin, and I'm very lucky that I've got some of her traits. So I don't use like super expensive stuff. And I just really started using moisturizer on a regular basis like a year ago. So
but your skin does look good.
Oh, thank you. But I've been pretty lucky that way. But now I really do try to, that putting myself first before others was never something I was very good at till I went through my own healing process, because I was also one of those people who needed to be the strong one, who needed to be the happy, perky one. And now that I've realized that it really does create an imbalance, not just in what you can provide to other people. You can provide more when you've provided more to yourself, but also the just how you feel on a regular basis, feeling healthy. So I do better with that.
Good. I'm proud of you.
And really, a lot of my kind of self-care is about getting enough sleep.
The rest of it all.
Making sure that I have a pretty balanced diet, that I'm getting enough fruits and veggies, and honestly, that I have that quiet time.
Yeah.
Because anybody who does kind of spiritual work, you need downtime because you have to recharge. It's
Correct.
almost like that's you're plugging yourself in. You wouldn't like use your phone for 5 days without plugging it in, right?
Right.
You
Mhm.
have to plug yourself in by having some downtime, having some quiet time so that you can kind of recharge your soul.
Beautifully said. Yeah, you got to have your inner software update as well as a human.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. All right, you guys. So for season two, 2024, we have another really fun segment that I'm really excited to spotlight our guests.
The library is open! Because reading is what? Fundamental! There you have it, darling.
And this is called The Library is Open. It's not to share shade, it's to share light. So, Linda, tell us, what is your favorite book that maybe you're currently reading, or your favorite book from the past, and what are your top three reasons why?
Okay. So I have two. I have one from the past and one that I'm reading now. The one from the past really goes along with that whole direction I'm going in right now. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss, I'm pretty sure his name is. And he was a psychiatrist therapist and he wrote this years ago. He was very ahead of his time, who started realizing that his client was suffering from a trauma that wasn't from this life, it was from a past life. And so he started doing past life regression and really helped heal his clients from past life trauma that was affecting this life. And it was a really fascinating book. I encourage it. Again,
Cool.
it's old, but it is so still relevant. So
Many
Many
lives,
Lives,
many
Many
master.
Masters.
Got
Definitely would
it.
recommend that. The
Thank
other
you.
the other one I'm reading right now, actually a friend gave it to me for my birthday, is Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart. And she really goes through a lot of different emotions and describing them. What do they mean? And if somebody had told me that, I would have been like, yeah, I'm not interested in that. But it's fascinating when you start really defining it, then you can start addressing it within yourself. Like, I thought I was feeling this emotion. No, I'm actually feeling that emotion. And it gives you a whole different direction on how to figure out where it comes from, how to deal with it, how to kind of heal from it. And like, I have this line in my book that once you feel it, you can heal it. And it's kind of like
Yes.
that,
Preach.
right? Where
Preach,
it's
Linda.
this definition of each emotion, and it's really fascinating. And there have been a couple of times in this book I've been like, huh, that changes some things. So I really recommend it. I love Brene Brown anyway. Her work on shame is life-changing. If you've not
Yeah.
seen it, there's YouTubes, there's books. But yeah, it's really fascinating.
Very cool. All right, you guys, you heard it here. Many Lives, Many Masters, and Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown. And my favorite book right now is Trauma Inspired by Linda Spellman. And one of my favorite things about this book is this awesome pyramid that you've laid out for us to look at the many steps that happen during triumph. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that. If you're watching this on the YouTube, you can see the pyramid that I'm holding up to the screen now. But if you're listening, Linda can walk us through it right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the pyramid really came away from the steps of trauma and healing from trauma that I found from the people that I interviewed. And it's in a pyramid, but it's often cyclical, where you might get to this step and then realize something else and go back and then go forward. And I'll read through these, but there's really kind of five main steps, main categories, I guess. There's take it in. And in that, you're going through kind of what's happened to you. There's take a stand, where what you're going to do, what are you going to do about it? There's take it off, where you basically start. Trauma's like wearing a heavy coat of armor. It's like sludging through mud, wearing a 200-pound backpack. And it's like, how do you take that off? The next one is take it away, where you're really starting your new life. And then there's triumph. So within those steps, there's like right after trauma, we react. And there's a whole chapter on reacting and the different ways people react. And a lot of it's from my experience, but it's also, again, from the different people that I interviewed, because people react differently. And then there's reorient, because basically you reorient to the new life that you have, right? Because your life won't be the same after trauma. You've now seen it through the lens of trauma. So it will always be different in a certain way. That doesn't mean it always has to be worse. It will just always be different. And then you resign or you regroup. So you can either resign yourself that this is the way it's always going to be, or you can kind of regroup, get your people, get your attitude, and say, okay, I'm going to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that takes days. Sometimes that takes decades.
I was going to say I've done both.
Yeah, I have too. I've done the decades more than the days. And then there's reprioritize, because when you're healing, you really have to reprioritize yourself. You have to say, okay, I am going to put myself first for a little while. I am going to take the time to heal. I am going to say, you know what? I make time to have dinner. I'm going to make time to go to therapy or to do whatever else that you decide you need. Then there's the reveal. It's revealing step by step. I call them trauma threads, where you start looking at, why did I react that way? And then you start pulling on that trauma thread. It's like when you pull on a thread of a sweater and then you think it's just this little tiny thread. And then now you've got the arm with the sweater in your hand because you started pulling on it. It's really long. Especially when you're dealing with trauma that was a while ago, or certainly a childhood trauma. It leaves footprints on your life, your whole life. And it can change your entire belief system, your self-esteem, to go through these trauma threads and heal them. It's remarkable. So after the reveal, there's the release. It's realizing all of these false beliefs, these truths that you had about yourself that you can then release. Then there's redefine, because now that you've released all this, you've kind of figured it all out, you've released, you can redefine yourself. Not just how you fit in your life, but who you are and who you want to be in other people's lives and who you don't want to be in other people's lives. This is where a lot of people start setting real good boundaries, and where people stop people pleasing and they start saying, you know what, no, I'm important too. The one thing I will want to put in here is that one of the most valuable things I learned is in codependency. I never thought I was codependent until somebody started reading a list off of characteristics of codependent people.
Right.
And I was like, oh,
Check.
that's me.
Check.
Is I decided that if I'm doing more for you than you're doing for you, then I got to stop. I just think that's valuable. So I wanted to pass it along. And then there's rediscovering your life as it is, with all you've learned, all the healing you've done. It's very invigorating. And then you're re-engaging with life. So that's what this is all about. And this whole book basically takes you through the details of that trauma and how to walk through it and how to really do it step by step.
It's really helped me, not only personally, but it's helped me with my surroundings and my clientele and my relationships and, friendships. So yeah, I'm very grateful for this. Thank you for sharing that beautiful pyramid. And again, you guys, check it out. It is right here, Trauma Inspired, available wherever you buy your favorite books. All right. I could talk to you forever because I love you.
I love you.
But I do have to keep this at the 60 minutes. So I'm going to introduce you to our Wrapping Up Mindful Artists rapid cues. And these are intuitively wherever you are, which you have that superpower already. I'm going to ask you 3 questions and just go ahead and answer them. So question number 1, Linda, who is your hero and why?
I've got 2. One is really a group of people. It's the people I interviewed for this book who were brave enough to share their stories in order to help others. The second one is my daughter. She's been through so many significant health crises, and she just keeps going. She's never let it get in her way, and she's an inspiration. She really is. She's my hero.
Yeah. Talk about through trauma, you triumph. That is the epitome of it. Wow. I love that. Thank you. Question number 2 for Wrapping Up Mindful Artists Rapid Cues. Linda Spellman, what is your favorite music album of all time and why?
For me, music is so much about a moment in time. I could name off a million. I would say one of the greatest albums of all time is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Elton John, because I feel like it was something so new and so free. And I just remember listening to it over and over. I mean, there's Carole King Tapestry. There's so many really classic ones, but
that's a good one though. The Elton John one. From beginning to end, just let it play. And for me, music is very spiritual too. So
absolutely. Very healing.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. All right. What is your favorite quote of all time?
Quote of all time. You know what? I have a quote that I looked for kind of quotes from people as I was writing my book. And one of the ones that really caught me was from Anne Frank. Look at how a single candle can both defy and define the darkness. Because to me, trauma does that. It defies and defines the darkness. And then one of the things I asked, I have a whole chapter in my book of quotes from the survivors I talked to. These people went through horrific experiences and they had some of the most beautiful things to say. And that's why I literally devoted a chapter. But there's one quote from one of hers. This survivor had an absent father. She was abused by her mother. She was raped in her 20s and survived an attempted suicide. And her quote says, I think there's a higher purpose to surviving trauma. The best people I know, the people who have brought me the most healing, are the traumatized. They're special.
Oof, I got chills. That was awesome. So we got 2 quotes. And if you want, you guys can just get the book, Trauma Inspired, and you'll see many more quotes that you can possibly relate to. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your love, your light, and your superpowers and all the things that you are gifted with. I'm so grateful to know you and to have you in my life. And you guys,
likewise, and thank you for having me.
of course, and this is your time to tell us where we can find you, how can we follow you, book a service, and what exactly can you provide as a service?
Absolutely. So my website is lightofthephoenix.com. I named it that because my life kind of burned around me into ashes, and I was a phoenix rising and I wanted to be a light for others. So that might help you remember it, Light of the Phoenix. I do obviously psychic medium readings. I do spiritual energy cleansing when you feel like you just are blocked or can't move forward. We accumulate energy all of the time. I do spiritual energy cleansing of homes. Either if you feel like you've got a presence in your home or you're trying to sell it and it's not selling, and soon past life regression. So stay tuned for that. But thank you, Andrew, for allowing me to share this time with you. I adore you. And for anybody who doesn't know Andrew, you are missing out.
Oh, thank you, babe. I appreciate you so much. You guys, we have Linda Spellman in the house, lightofthephoenix.com. Check it out. And the book, Trauma Inspired, 50 Survivors, One Shared Path Through Trauma, Transformation, and Triumph with a Twist. This is your one-stop shop place for all things mindfulness, creativity, balancing spirituality while being an entrepreneur. Thank you so much for being here, Linda, and everybody else. Make an impact in somebody's life. Make sure that you follow love and light. And that song you're about to hear is called Mi Corazón. You can download wherever you stream your favorite music. Till the next time, you guys, I'll see you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.